I've always enjoyed storytelling. I've always enjoyed telling stories, being told stories, and playing games that had lots of good story. And so it's really strange that it took me so long to get into a game like Dungeons & Dragons. Hey there, I'm Jake of the OneManBand, and welcome to the dungeon. So, as the first forte into recounting of great stories, I'm gonna take you guys on an adventure to the first game that I ever DM'd. Now, you may think that it was probably a foolish idea for someone barely brand new to the tabletop RPG game scene and to Dungeons & Dragons in general, that maybe DMing, and not only DMing, but DMing a totally homebrewed game would have been a bad idea. That maybe I should have been a player first. Maybe I should have went with one of the modules first. But nah, not me. Not my crazy ass. No. I wanted to dive straight into a story of my own creation. So, allow me to set the scene. This story takes place on the world of Moss. It is a world of my own design, of my own make, something that I've honestly been working on for like probably the past 12, maybe 15 years. This story takes place on the planet of Moss and in a land known as the Granite Kingdoms. And in the Granite Kingdoms, a great mighty war has broken out between two opposing sides. One side seems to be using evil, demonic soldiers that are just reaping the battlefield and are achieving victory in almost every battle. While the losing side has opened up their coffers and is offering money, wealth, treasure, pretty much anything that you might want for mercenaries to come and aid them in their fight. And that's where our adventurers come in. Now, I was using this as a session 0. And in this session 0, I wanted to introduce my players into how to play Dungeons & Dragons. None of them had played before, and the familiarity, that's the word, with the game itself was a little bit lacking on almost everyone's part. I mostly learned how to play and run Dungeons & Dragons by reading up on the books, watching YouTube videos, and of course indulging in Critical Role. So during this session 0, our characters had been traveling with a caravan of mercenaries that were being led to the sort of command center of the forces that were hiring them. But they had stopped for the night at a road inn known as the Green Dragon. Not really all that original, but I just wanted something that would work and something that would be fun for the players. So, who are our merry band of adventurers, you may ask? Well, we have Crookdook, the lizardman fighter, who's pretty much a pirate. That is exactly what he is. We have Jack, who is a jackal ranger, and jackals in this world are very similar to the Egyptian god Anubis. And then we also have YOLO Swaggins, the cat folk rogue. So, I start off session 0 with them essentially entering the inn. And I let them know, now guys, this is Dungeons & Dragons. You can do anything that you want. If you want to drink at the bar, you can drink at the bar. If you want to sleep with the barmaid, you can sleep with the barmaid. If you want, pretty much anything goes. And depending on if you succeed or not is decided completely by the roll of your dice. And I think they really took that to heart. Because, oh boy, this is where the real story begins. So, to start off this session 0, our 3 adventurers decide to head to the bar and just grab a drink. They just take a look around the inn, and what they see is, it looks like a lot of local farmers have come to this inn for a drink at the end of a long workday. There's plenty of other mercenaries that were traveling in the caravan also in there, as well as what looks like a traveling merchant and his bodyguard. Our Jackal Ranger, Jack, decides that he's gonna go over to a stout and not gnarly, but grizzled old dwarf. And so Jack goes over and is just like, hey, how's it going? And the dwarf's all like, oh, hello there. I'm just, here reading my holy texts. And this dwarf was an NPC that I had created whose name was Ron. And he was a cleric. And he was meant to be, when the adventure actually started, he was meant to be a starting NPC who would stay with them at least for a little while, so that essentially they would have some form of healing, because clerics in D&D can do great healing. They're also really good warriors. He was mostly meant there to aid them in their early adventure. And Jack takes notice of Ron's very nice-looking battle axe. And this battle axe is inscribed with dwarvic runes, and it's almost glowing with magical power. And Jack, for some reason, is like, I want to try to get him away from that axe. I want to try to poke and prod this dwarf to see how long it takes before he breaks. And I'm just like, okay, you can do that. And so Jack proceeds to continue talking to Ron, trying to figure out what his whole deal is, to try to egg him on. And that's it. I believe Crookdook was then gonna try to take his axe, because he really liked the axe, and the fact that it was magical was like really, really cool. And they fail. They hardcore failed the sleight of hand check to steal the axe. And the dwarf is just like, look, I don't know what you're doing, but this is my axe, and I kind of need it. It's a family heirloom, and I'm not gonna give it to you. You know, kind of giving off an air of, you know, he knows what you did, and he's giving you a warning, but he doesn't really want to fight you, because, you know, he's busy. In the meantime, YOLO goes over to the traveling merchant and his bodyguard that are actually catfolk, the same as her. And as she approaches, the catfolk who's sitting down looks up and is like, ah, a person of my kind. How may I help you, stranger? And YOLO's like, man, I don't really know, because, like, I'm not really in the mood for buying anything, but, I really like the look of your bodyguard. And I described this bodyguard as being, he's like a tall, lion-looking catfolk, and he's just ripped with muscles and all this. And YOLO's just instantly like, I'ma fuck that. And so YOLO proceeds to talk with the bodyguard, whose name is Pyroar. And she's just like, hey, look, you're pretty hot. And he's like, okay, thank you. I mean, you're not bad looking yourself. and YOLO proceeds to kind of just make small talk and flirt with him. And the best flirting that I heard from this exchange was when YOLO essentially leaned into Pyroar's ear and whispered, I want to play with your ball of yarn. And so they proceed to go up to a room in the inn and do the deed. And I actually had the player roll to see how well that they did. And let me tell you, it was some pretty good rolls. So, while YOLO and Pyroar are busy upstairs playing with balls of yarn, Crookdook and Jack decide to, you know, we're gonna stop messing with the dwarf. He wasn't playing the game, if you will. He wasn't getting mad or agitated or anything. So they were just like, okay, fine. So what are we gonna do? And this is when Jack gets the brilliant idea. I'm gonna burn down the tavern. Now let it be known, this was a session 0. But that didn't mean that what happened in the session 0 wouldn't be important later on. And so when the idea of burning down the tavern came up, I was like, okay, how are you gonna do that? And Jack and Crookdook proceed to look around and they're like, okay, well, what do we see that might help us? And I say, well, you guys do have some torches in your inventory, and behind the bar is just a lot of bottled alcohol, which could be flammable. Crookdook and Jack are like, okay, we're gonna use the alcohol that's behind the bar to light the inn on fire. And the whole time, the player who's playing YOLO's like, don't light it on fire. I'm getting it busy with the strong, muscular lion man. And they're like, hush up, you're not down here. You're upstairs playing with yarn. Don't worry about it. And so, Crookdook pulls out a torch and hands it to Jack. And Jack lights the torch on fire and starts walking over to the bar to kind of break the bottles and light them on fire at the same time. And that's when the bartender turns to them and simply goes, what the hell are you two doing? They didn't, because they were so new to the game, the players didn't realize that they literally did this with everyone in the tavern watching what they were doing. The people in this inn literally saw them pull out a torch, light the torch ablaze, and start walking towards the bar with malicious intent. And so, oh boy, what are they to do now? They've been caught. And that's when Crookdook comes up with the most ingenious idea. Crookdook points to a random person in the crowd and yells, he puts a spell on me! A spell to make me want to burn down this tavern! And the guy he pointed to is just some old-looking farmer dude who's like, what? Nah, I didn't do this thing like that. And everyone else in the tavern's like, what? No, that he's not magical at all. That's just Dale, the farmer. And Crookdook is just like, no, he no be a farmer. He be a spy. Or a witch. A spy witch. He be a spy witch who's trying to betwixt me and make me burn down this tavern. And everyone starts to get in an argument. The two players, Jack and Crookdook, are just throwing accusations at poor Farmer Dale. Meanwhile, Farmer Dale's like, I don't know what's going on. And everyone else in the tavern's just like, no, he's a good guy. What's going on here? And at this point, YOLO and Pyroar have finished their lovemaking. And they come walking down the stairs to this cacophony of what's going on. And YOLO sees who it is that's like kind of caused the commotion. And she's simply just like, okay, yeah, I'm not a part of this. And she kind of just hides behind Pyroar to just be like, no, I'm not associated with those people. And so, as this argument is happening, the captain of the caravan, who hired all the mercenaries to go to war, so pretty much the player's boss, or the character's boss, comes in and is like, all right, what's going on here? And everyone's just like, these people, they're saying that Farmer Dale is a spy witch and he's not a spy witch. They were gonna burn down the tavern or do something malicious. And he's like, is this true? And hey, I believe Jack and Crookdook attempt to lie, but didn't do so well. So they were promptly taken outside and locked in the stockades. And so they were stuck in the stockades, and we're just like, well, how did it all go so wrong? And I'm just over here saying, it went wrong when you tried to burn down an establishment with people still inside. And they were just like, but it would have been fun. And I was like, yeah, it would have been fun if you would have succeeded. And, you know, this was kind of a good way to kind of introduce them to, you know, stuff. You can do whatever you want, but there could be consequences for it. So since it was session 0, I'm like, the guard captain comes over after an hour or two and is like, all right, I'm just going to assume that you were drunk at the time. I talked it over with the tavern. They're, you know, they forgive you as long as you stay away from Farmer Dale. And they're like, okay. And so they go back into the tavern. And at this point, YOLO's kind of just been hanging out with Pyroar and the merchant. And so they go over and join YOLO. And Mirek's just like, that was quite a display that you put on a couple hours ago. So, I know that you are traveling in that caravan that is going to war, but how would you like to do a job for me? And they're like, oh, whoa, what kind of job? And Mirek's like, oh, the owner of this tavern. He has something of mine that I wish returned to me. It is a little red box, and he keeps it in his back room. I would like it very much to be in my possession once again. But you cannot kill anyone. And so they're all like, okay, so how can we do this? Crookdook is just like, we could try to burn down the tavern. No, I think it was Jack that was like, we could try to burn down the tavern again. And Crookdook's like, I don't think that's such a good idea. And YOLO's like, yeah, definitely not. And so the party comes to the decision that, okay, why don't we create a distraction? And then YOLO sneaks into the back because she's a sneaky, sneaky rogue and steals it. And so they're like, okay, how are we going to make it the distraction? And after they convince Jack to put the torch away again, Crookdook comes up with the idea, I could sing a merry sea shanty and get everyone's attention on me. And that would give YOLO the time to sneak into the back and get the item. And they come to the conclusion, like, okay, yeah, that's a good idea. And so Crookdook kind of gets in the center of the tavern and starts singing a merry sea shanty. And, you know, everyone else kind of gets into it. He rolled pretty well on his performance check. And everyone kind of gets into it. And Jack is kind of in the background giving, like, emphasis to, like, points, is kind of like walking around and making sure people aren't looking at the door that YOLO's going through. And so YOLO then sneaks into the back and after a little bit of searching is able to find the little red box and then recovers it and takes it back out to Mirek. And he is eternally grateful. He gives them a little bit of gold. And with that, it ends the session 0 of the very first campaign that I ever ran. Now, this campaign would go on to be a couple sessions long. I ended up having to drop it because of just story reasons. But I would love to regale you guys with the story of the very first game that I ever ran in its entirety in future episodes. But for right now, that was session 0. The very first time I played Dungeons & Dragons proper, the very first time I DM'd Dungeons & Dragons proper, and the very first time my group of friends, who would go on to be my classic D&D party, ever played the game. So, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this little video that I did. I really want to do more videos like this where I'm telling stories and doing silly little animations to make it a little bit more bearable. So, if you enjoyed, go ahead, leave a like, comment, and I'll see you next time I'm out there in YouTube land. I'll see you then, and you are now exiting the dungeon.